So, welcome and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for this conversation about special offerings. We're so pleased to welcome both Wilson Kennedy and Lauren Rogers here to guide us today. Wilson is the director of special offerings, and Lauren wears a lot of hats, including being our representative, and can help congregations with a lot of resourcing and tools. And I'll let you both introduce yourself in a minute, but please feel free to share all of the different skills and resources that you bring to the presbytery, because I think the well is deeper than a lot of our congregations and leaders realize. Um, so this webinar is part of a new series offered by the Presbytery of Chicago with the goal to help us find ways to connect, to join together. This is the lunch hour, so if you have brought your lunch with you, do not be shy. Way to go, Chris. Don't be shy to eat on screen, drink your coffee, drink your soda. This really is not a formal gathering, but an opportunity for us to learn from Wilson and Lauren, but also to learn from each other. So think up your questions and the things that you're curious about, but also we're curious to learn from you. If there are things you are doing in your setting with special offerings, if there are things that your stewardship committees and your mission committees are trying that have worked well, we want to hear about it so that we
Mhm.
can figure out how that might work in other contexts. If there's things you've tried that haven't worked well, don't be shy to share that, because we can learn from each other and what different things we've tried and refine and shape together. So I'm going to turn the microphone over now to Lauren and Wilson. But again, we're hoping this will be a conversation and a discussion when we can kind of grow and explore together. So, Lauren and Wilson.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jana. My name is Lauren Rogers. I am your Ministry Engagement Advisor at the PCUSA. My job is to support and resource congregations and mid-councils as they engage with Presbyterian mission and ministry. So that includes special offerings, but it also includes supporting our mission coworkers. It includes, having conversations about per capita. And so I'm here to be a resource for y'all. If you have questions about anything having to do with Presbyterian Mission or the Office of General Assembly, I'm here to answer that for you. I also can help you come up with ways to engage your congregation as you give to support these ministries. I serve 30 presbyteries, so synods of Covenant, Living Waters, and then, of course, Lincoln Trails. So I get to talk to a lot of wonderful people about the ministry that they're doing, which is fantastic because then I can share it with other folks. And that's what, I hope to do a little bit of today and vice versa. So learn from y'all and be able to share that, not just with our team back in Louisville, but also across the denomination. And then I'm going to pass it to Wilson, who's going to actually start our presentation.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. I'm Reverend Wilson Kennedy, and my official title is Associate Director for Special Offerings and Appeals, which means that I have the privilege of leading and directing the church-wide special offerings, the Presbyterian Giving Catalog, and then also all those wonderful emails and pieces of paper that you receive through the mail asking you to support Presbyterian mission and ministry through our direct mail program and other appeals that pop up throughout the year, like the appeal related to hurricane relief happening down in North Carolina and Florida and Georgia through the fantastic transformative work of Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. I have been in this role for just about a year, just a little over a year, and before that, I was a presbytery executive and a pastor in the South. So it is an honor and privilege to be here today and to talk to you a little bit about special offerings and the ways that special offerings is doing its level best to impact and transform the world in the name of Christ. So Lauren's going to share her screen, and we've got just a brief presentation. So I'm happy to talk to you about special offerings today for just a few minutes and all the ways that special offerings is working with our mission and ministry that is governed and enlivened by the General Assembly here and around the globe. So next slide, please, Lauren. So church-wide special offerings directly impacts people experiencing hunger and homelessness, thirst, imprisonment, sickness, hunger, disaster, and oppression, and so many other things. I know that many of you are already supporting the work of the church and are receiving one or more or all four of the church-wide special offerings. I just want to shout out all the churches that are participating already in special offerings. Over 7,000 PCUSA congregations participate in at least one of the special offerings, and it is one of the best ways. Now I'm going to say it's the best way that a congregation can engage in the mission and ministry of the church here and around the globe. And we've been doing this work for a long time. Our oldest offering, Christmas Joy Offering, for those of you who may have been around the church prior to the time of reunion in 1983, might know the Christmas Joy Offering as the Joy Offering. For Southern Presbyterians, it was known as the Joy Gift Offering. That goes all the way back to the 1930s. One Great Hour of Sharing has been going on since the 1940s. And then, of course, our more recent additions, the Pentecost Offering, which has been around since 1998, and the Peace and Global Witness Offering, formerly known as the Pentecost Offering, which has been around since the late 1960s, early 1970s in different expressions and forms. So this is one of the best ways Presbyterians combine together, live into the connectionalness of the church, live into that obligation we have that the Book of Order and the Book of Confessions invites us to be one church in many parts, governed in councils, and to do this work together. That is what special offering strives to do, is to help churches live into what it means to be Presbyterian, to work in councils, and to bind ourselves together in mission, ministry, and service to Jesus. So next slide. There's a lot of fundraising research that tells us a whole lot of things about how churches and individuals are relating themselves through their giving to those things that they're passionate about. For so long, churches have operated with the in the paradigm that folks are just going to give. And this is both churches, individual congregations, but then also I would say capital C church denominations, the church universal, that folks are just going to give because that's what you're supposed to do. And there's a lot of research that tells us that that is still the case for folks who are older. Yet we are also seeing that folks who are maybe under the age of 50 approach giving in a different way, and are looking at connecting their gifts, their time and talent, their tithes and offerings to things that they're most passionate about. And so it's the work of special offerings to help bridge that gap. And it's a way that special offerings is really helpful for congregations and mid-councils, is to help y'all bridge that gap too, to help folks who understand giving as I give to Presbyterian causes because I'm Presbyterian and I'm 8 generations deep all the way back from, wherever. And I'm going to give to Presbyterian things because I'm obligated to do so. But then also those younger folks too, who say, I'm passionate about things like racial justice, or I'm passionate about things like poverty alleviation, hunger alleviation, disaster response. It is a way to bridge the gap between all ages in primary response and gratitude to God's grace, which is essentially reformed. That's how Calvin taught us, how Calvin wrote about the work of the church. It is, grace and gratitude. And so we in special offerings are helping folks understand that giving is different for different people, yet we combine ourselves together as the body of Christ to do the work of the church. And one of the best ways, primary ways we can do that is through giving. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of special offerings. Lauren, if you'll move on to the next slide. Here's our giving totals. In 2023, you'll see that the total is about, if I'm doing my math correctly, it's a little bit over $11 million that were given in gratitude to God's grace through the special offerings. You'll see One Great Hour Sharing, which is, of course, the largest of the offerings, is received around Palm Sunday and Easter, and it supports Presbyterian Disaster Assistance and the Hunger Program and SDOP, Self-Development of People. I'll talk more about that in a second. But you'll see here the giving totals, and this is net receipts. So this is just the money, the dollars that were faithfully given by Presbyterians in all 50 states and in Puerto Rico as well. So these are our giving totals for 2023, and we hope to have our 2024 numbers very soon once we get into January. So one great hour of sharing, like I was saying, is the largest of our four offerings. It's currently split three ways. 32% go to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, which I know many of you are aware of Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and we're ever mindful and prayerful of their response, as I said, in Florida and Georgia and North Carolina, as they respond to Hurricane Helene and anticipate response related to Hurricane Milton. 36% go to supports the Presbyterian Hunger Program and its work to alleviate hunger and its parallel issue of poverty here and around the globe. And 4% of that, which is what makes it a little bit different, goes directly to support affordable housing initiatives in this country as we attempt to alleviate the housing crisis in the best way that we can in our nation. And then the final 32% goes to support self-development of people. We'll hear more from self-development of people in just a little bit. I know that that is one of the signature ministries of the Presbytery of Chicago, and the way that you respond in your within the bounds of your presbytery through partnering with people to support one another. So that is one great hour of sharing. Next, I'm going to tell you about Pentecost offering. Pentecost offering, of course, is received around Pentecost, just 50 days after Easter. And Pentecost offering supports a variety of initiatives that are the church's engagement with children, youth, and young adults. 40% is retained in the congregation to support your local efforts, be it youth ministry or partnerships with schools and colleges and other things like that. 25% supports our Young Adult Volunteers program, a fantastic signature program of the church that is places young adults in intentional community for a year of service. 25% stays with the ministries that make up Presbyterian Youth Triennium, which will be happening this summer, or the summer of 2025 in Louisville. And we're really excited. I was on a call yesterday with Gina, who manages that, and it sounds like it's going to be a great year. Lauren's on the planning team for that. So if you have any questions about Triennium or any of this, talk to Lauren, because she is your go-to resource for all things. And then 10% supports our Educate a Child, Transform the World national initiative, which is looking at lifting up children at promise and creating pathways, working with partners to create pathways to help children gain those basic skills that they need to flourish throughout their life. Next is Peace and Global Witness offering. Peace and Global Witness offering was just received this past Sunday, and I know I heard from Stuart, and I'm sure many of the Presbytery of Chicago congregations received Peace and Global Witness. 25% again remains with your congregation to support your peacemaking ministries. 25% goes to your mid-council to support mid-council ministries related to peacemaking and reconciliation. And then 50% is supportive of programs like Presbyterian Peacemaking Program, which has for many years been a pivotal resource for communities here and around the globe that are engaging in the work of peacemaking and striving every day for Christ's vision for the world, which is a world that is at peace with one another. So peacemaking, the Peace and Global Witness offering is just one other way. It's received on World Communion Sunday. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk about our oneness in Christ, that from any place we may be from, any place that we call home, we are together and we are bound to one another through the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. And finally, is our fourth offering of the year, which is the Christmas Joy offering. Christmas Joy offering has been received since 1946, and it is one of the best ways that churches can engage with leadership, past, present, and future. 50% of the offering supports the assistance program that's managed by the Board of Pensions that provides assistance grants to church workers who are in need or in crisis. And then the other 50% supports the schools and colleges that equip communities of color. There are currently 3 institutions that fall into this category. That's Menaul School in Albuquerque. This picture here is from Menaul Presbyterian Pan American School in Kingsville, Texas, and Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I love to talk about these schools because this is one of the most essential ways that we have committed as the church to be in solidarity with siblings who are on the margins in various ways. At the time of reunion, the one of the articles of agreement between the two streams, the northern and southern stream, was a particular care for schools and colleges that equip persons of color. And these three schools are doing that. Lauren and I have had the privilege of visiting the Pan American School and Stillman College both this year, and I also had the opportunity twice this year to go to Manal School to see what's going on. And I can't tell you how impactful the ministries of these places are. And so every dollar that is received through Christmas Joy provides direct support for these schools and colleges. It's not going and sitting in an endowment somewhere. These dollars matter to these students and the ways that they're able to grow and to flourish as they move into young adulthood. Christmas Joy is a fantastic way for our congregations to look outside themselves as we celebrate the birth of Christ and to engage in the world in powerful ways. Just a couple other things I want to tell you about, and then I know Lauren's got some other things to share. In addition to the work of special offerings, I also have the privilege of leading the work of the Presbyterian Giving Catalog. Many of you, probably over 2 million of you, actually received new 20 Christmas 2024 Presbyterian Giving Catalogs in the mail in the past couple of weeks. It is a fantastic way to engage in new ways with the work that Presbyterian Mission and Ministry is enlivening here and around the world. You see in front of you, I put the picture in of the Korean version because that's a great way for us to remember that every single thing that comes out of Churchwide Special Offerings, Presbyterian Giving Catalog, always available in English, Spanish, and Korean. That is our commitment to ensure that we have equal access, as equal as we can provide, with the languages that are always translated and interpreted at gatherings of the General Assembly and other things. And that's to say, if you need Spanish translation for documents related to churchwide special offerings or Korean translation, just call our office, reach out to Lauren, and we will get it to you as quickly as possible. One final thing I want to tell you about, and then I'll turn it over to Lauren. And that's I want to tell you about First Presbyterian Church in Bridgeton, New Jersey. This is a great example of the transformative power of special offerings. I got a call from Elder Deborah Boykin Greenberg late last year, 2023. And she started out the call by saying, giving through the Presbyterian Giving Catalog and special offerings has caused a renewal in our church. Now, as Lauren knows, sometimes I'm one for hyperbole, but even I was a little taken aback by this statement. And I wanted to learn more about this because that's a big thing. You know, how does giving cause transformation or renewal? And she explained that this church, longtime supporters of PCUSA mission coworkers in Malawi, and as those mission coworkers were ending their terms of service, the session entered into a season of discernment. And they realized Bridgeton, New Jersey, as you might imagine, is close to the Atlantic Ocean. They went through Superstorm Sandy back in 2010. They have a particular care for access to clean water. That was a major issue that their congregation they knew they could support, in addition to continuing their mission coworker support, although the mission coworkers that they had been supporting were ending their service. They first heard about Presbyterian Giving Catalog at a Presbyterian meeting, and they just decided they were going to make an initial gift just to, pun intended, test the waters and see what that experience was like for their congregation. They realized that receiving a story of impact related to their gift to support clean water initiatives, which are in the Giving Catalog and are spoken to throughout the churchwide special offerings, realized that it connected them in a new way to the Presbyterian Church, that they felt that connectional nature in a more powerful way than they ever had before. So then they started saying, well, the Giving Catalog is great, but we want to do this more consistently. So they started receiving churchwide special offerings, continuing their support through the catalog. They found opportunities locally to be engaged in issues of equal access to water, which led to equal access to food, and poverty alleviation. And that church found a new identity because they found a way to do it. And it started in the Presbyterian Giving Catalog and churchwide special offerings. So I believe, Elder Boykin Greenberg, when she says it caused a renewal in her church, because it got them focused around something that really speaks to the idea that for some, giving is an obligation and others, giving is a choice. And they were able to combine their efforts as a congregation, young and old, to really make a difference in their community, both through their giving and then with their time and talent as well. So thank you so much. One last slide, and that's just our Facebook and Instagram profiles. Do follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Specialofferings.pcusa.org is a great resource for you to learn everything you need to know. Or you can also go to pcusa.org/special offerings. It's a great way for you to know and learn everything you need at any time. Please feel free to reach out to Lauren, reach out to our office. We're here to help you. It's our job to help your ministries flourish. And any way we can do that means that we're fulfilling our call. So thank you so much. And Lauren's got some things to share, and then I think we're going to engage in some conversation. So Lauren.
Absolutely. So avert your eyes real quick as I go back through these slides. So I want to take a few moments to focus in on one great hour of sharing for a couple reasons. One, for those congregations that aren't currently engaging with the special offerings, one great hour of sharing is the easiest entry point. It is the single greatest way that Presbyterians come together to share God's love with our neighbors in need around the world. Fun fact, as we know it, One Great Hour of Sharing began in 1949 when church leaders from several denominations, including the Presbyterian Church, began working together to promote an effort in response to the continuing recovery from World War II. Major networks broadcast a show called One Great Hour on Saturday, March 26th at 10 p.m. Eastern. And the broadcast featured President Truman, as well as some major musicians and actors of the time, and closed with a request to make a sacrificial contribution at their own place of worship the next morning. While there's no record of the funds raised that day, it's estimated that over 75,000 churches participated. And it's just been growing from there. So if you do the math, 1949, we are celebrating 75 years of One Great Hour of Sharing in the Presbyterian Church this year. We actually did a great fundraiser at a General Assembly this summer in Salt Lake City, where we encouraged folks to give $75 in honor of those 75 years, and are, continuing to receive those gifts through the end of the year. Over time, many aspects of the offering have changed, but the purpose remains the same: to collect gifts for those in need, including disaster relief, refugee assistance, and development aid, because in Isaiah 58, we are called to be repairers of the breach. And an important thing to note is that while most congregations receive One Great Hour of Sharing during Lent, usually either Palm Sunday or on Easter Sunday, you can engage with this special offering as well as all special offerings all year long. So if your session came together tomorrow and said, hey, we are receiving One Great Hour of Sharing at the end of the month, wonderful, we'd love to support you in that. You are not beholden to that calendar. So just something to keep in mind, especially as Wilson mentioned earlier, we have current hurricane responses, and we are still not toward the end of that season yet. And so gifts to One Great Hour Sharing allow that work to take place quickly and efficiently. This is just a screen grab of our One Great Hour of Sharing map. It shows you where different projects are taking place that are supported by gifts to One Great Hour of Sharing, to the Presbyterian Hunger Program, Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and self-development of people. So you can see the wide reach that Presbyterian generosity has here. And then just kind of zooming in on North America, there is so much taking place. We update this map every year around the One Great Hour of Sharing season to reflect the most recent projects that are being supported by these funds. So stay tuned in 2025. Hopefully this will be even grander, but it's really impressive what's taking place, not only around the world, but within our own neighborhoods. So Chicago Presbytery has been a wonderful supporter of One Great Hour of Sharing. And I just want to highlight a couple of numbers. Over the past 10 years, the congregations within your presbytery have given over $800,000 to One Great Hour of Sharing. which is absolutely incredible. As I mentioned before, I support numerous presbyteries, and I there are so many presbyteries that you combine all four special offerings over the last 10 years, and they're not even close to this number. So it just really shows what generous hearts that the folks in Chicago Presbytery have. And then, as you know, COVID hit right while we were in the middle of One Great Hour of Sharing season in 2020. But Chicago Presbytery continued to respond in 2020 and beyond. And so since the COVID-19 pandemic began, Chicago Presbytery has given over $300,000. So thank you so much for your generosity. And as we continue to live into this call together to be repairers of the breach, please, again, use Wilson and I as a resource as you celebrate this special offering. I want to bring it just a little bit closer to home for y'all. You might be familiar with this program, Alliance for Community Services. I want to take a moment to talk about them, as well as Adapt Chicago, which is one of 9 organizations under the umbrella of Alliance of Community Services. And they have partnered with the Presbyterian Committee on the Self-Development of People for the past several years now. So this program was formed about 10 years ago when public aid offices were being closed and Medicaid benefits were being cut around the state. According to the group's coordinator, Fran Tobin, they work to bring people together with disabilities, low-income families, and frontline service workers to resist threats, to identify common ground, and put the human back in human services. Specifically, Adapt Chicago is a 501c4 nonprofit, which organizes disability rights activists to engage in nonviolent direct action, including civil disobedience, to assure the civil and human rights of people with disabilities in order to live in freedom. Fran has shared that although there are a lot of benefits of working with the self-development of people, the centerpiece that makes the partnership important is the moral centering that self-development of people has of the lived experience of people experiencing poverty and oppression and engaging in making the world a better place. Adapt is an entirely volunteer grassroots organization, which is a great sense of pride for folks involved. And by their own admittance, they're not big, but they punch above their weight. A couple of examples of what they've been able to accomplish recently. Earlier this year, members met with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson to address the inequities in the taxi industry. They shared, if we were able-bodied people, we would be able to call a cab in 2 or 3 minutes. But now for us disabled folks, we are waiting for an hour or more in certain places, and that's just not acceptable. The mayor agreed, and he said that together they are going to look for ways to incentivize cabs to take more wheelchair riders. They also staged a successful protest last August at Senator Don Harmon's office because he took over $100,000 from the nursing home lobby. People papered his office with letters that were sent to him because they weren't sure if he was reading the letters, so they just covered the office with it. One member shared, Senator Harmon has been taking tons of money from lobbyists so that residents of nursing homes taking tons of money from lobbyists, which is stopping the anti-retaliation bill so that residents of nursing homes don't get penalized by speaking up. We will be back if he keeps taking their money and stops passing this bill. So it's just really incredible what this organization has been able to do, putting the human back into human services. And I'm now going to take a moment to pass it over to Hope and Paul, who are doing some great work locally with the Self-Development of People Committee. And so Hope Daniels, Paul Abraham, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're grateful to be with you today. And I just couldn't stop smiling when I heard you talk about the Alliance for Community Services. We have worked with them over the past several years and so grateful for all the work that they do on behalf of seniors and disabled people across not just Chicago, but across the country. They are lifting up people who are truly in need. I know you've heard the adage that if you give a guy a fish, you feed him a meal, but if you're teaching the fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's what Fran and his group, Lindsay particularly, Lindsay Sullivan, who was on that steering committee, they are teaching others who have faced what they face on how to go forward and be successful. And so it's always grateful to be able to support people like that who are doing such good work in the community. And I've got to tell you, back in February, I think it was the February Presbytery Assembly meeting, Paul and I stood up and said, "Thank you for your support of 1 great hour of sharing, and please don't forget to do it again this year." And we are grateful to hear that people heard our cry and responded. It's wonderful. Paul?
Yeah, I'm good. We also have produced a few videos. One of the things we are finding is that not everybody is aware of these programs, and we need to, socialize these programs, both in my church and in many other churches locally. We find people are unaware. So the easiest way to do that is maybe using a 3-minute video. So we have produced a couple of 3-minute videos.
And what is your committee up to right now? What work are you doing? And if folks want to get involved, what does that look like?
Well, this past year we held a workshop inviting community organizations to come in and take a look at the self-development of people and how the grant application process actually works. And the workshop was very successful. We looked for people who are grassroots groups who are looking to make a change in social services and the help for people who are needy in our society, the people who are poor and oppressed. And we came up with a list of quite a few people this year. And we have just gone through the process of reviewing all the grant requests that we've received. And we've just identified 4. We don't have a lot of money, but we've identified 4 of the recipients for our grants this year, and they are being notified as we speak. So that's what we've been up to. When we had site visits this year, it was Zoom visits with all of the committees that applied for grants and talked to them about what they were doing and how self-development of people works with people who are helping people who are facing challenges. The people who have faced challenges are helping those who are now facing challenges. And unfortunately, the need is getting greater.
The need outstrips what we have currently.
Right. And so we're trying to find ways to connect some of these organizations with churches, because then they can apply for funds through the mission committee of the Presbytery, the synod of our congregations, or even PCUSA. But they need to have that relationship with a Presbyterian church to make that next step. We don't say you must have a connection with the church, but we're urging it now, and we're going to help some of these nonprofit groups connect with churches. That's what we've been up to.
Yeah, so one of the models that we could use is, like, for example, I know that our Chicago Presbytery has an alliance with the church in Cuba. And, there's a lot of exchange of ideas and people and, of course, funds. So maybe we could connect a few of our applicants to, churches which have fairly large mission and outreach budgets. And that could be another way to secure funding for the greater need that we have.
Absolutely. I'm looking for a church home for the Alliance for Community Services.
Yeah.
Just talked with Fran a few weeks ago, and he would very much like to partner with a Presbyterian church. So I've reached out to the Presbytery of Chicago office and talked with Barbara Wilson, and she has agreed to help me find a connection for the Alliance, which could greatly use the support.
That's awesome. So it seems like there's a lot of opportunity here to get involved. One more question for y'all. Where can you maybe provide an example of impact from your group, or a moment of transformation within Chicago Presbytery thanks to your committee, your SDOP committee?
You want to take that one, Paul?
You want me to just play that video?
It's the video. Paul's right. We've played the videos at.
So do you want to watch Lincoln Park Community Service or Alliance for Community Service?
Yeah, Paul produced the videos, and we actually played them at Presbytery assemblies. And afterward, people came up to us and said, "Well, what can we do?"
Yeah,
and that's immediate impact.
And they actually talk about the impact in these videos.
Oh, great! That would be awesome. We were not prepared for this, but let's try it.
So you got to give me ability to share my desktop.
Okay. Let's see. Jana, will he have the ability to share?
Yeah, actually, I already have
You
it.
should already have the ability. Yeah.
I do have
There we
it
go.
now.
Great.
Let me know if you can see it.
We can see it.
It's the logo for SDOP, right?
It is an opening image with the logo, yes.
Daniels with Paul Abram, and we are with the Presbytery of Chicago Mid-Council Self-Developmental People Committee. We are a ministry that affirms God's concern for humankind. We are Presbyterians and ecumenical partners dissatisfied with poverty, oppression, united in faith and action through sharing, confronting, and enabling by participating in the empowerment of the economically poor, oppressed, and disadvantaged people, seeking to change the structures that perpetrate poverty, oppression, and injustice. Our guest is Fran Tobin with the Alliance for Community Services. The Alliance brings together people with disabilities, low-income families, and frontline service workers to resist threats, identify common ground, and put the human back in human services. They call for healthcare and human services for all, person-centered, fully staffed, and accountable human service offices, and progressive revenue to fully fund a social safety net. We're pleased to welcome Fran Tobin. He's the coordinator for the Alliance for Community Services. Welcome, Fran. We're pleased you could be with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Could you please share with us the top 3 benefits of working with the self-developmental people and how it helps you meet your goals, and how the people who benefit from the grant are directly involved in the programs and projects?
Well, thanks. There are a lot of benefits, of course, to working with the SDOP. The centerpiece, I think, that really makes it a partnership important is the moral centering that SDOP has of lived experience.
Paul, I think the video froze. At least it froze for me.
Froze for me.
Yeah. Hope, can you summarize the rest of the video?
Absolutely. Fran goes on to talk about the projects and programs that they've worked on and the successes that they've had, and how the people who participate in the training are helping those who need the same kind of training, and how the need is growing. He talked to us once about how there were senior citizens living in a senior citizen home, and they suddenly found themselves without running water. And so Fran and his group took over cases of bottled water, only to realize they didn't even have water to take showers with. And so Fran and his group began to walk down to City Hall, to all the politicians, anyone that they could find that even might listen, and within weeks had everything changed around. But it took a minute for people to listen and understand the need that these folks have. And so Paul goes on to say that they're not going to stop. In fact, when I did a site visit with Lindsay and Paul a few weeks ago, Lindsay was in the hospital. She turned over to her tablet while she was in her hospital bed and met with me. She said, I'm going to get out of here in a week or so, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to you about the self-development of people and how they are developing, they're doing leadership development among the people who have now gone through the self-help training. And so now they've got a whole new group of leaders that are coming in to face all the issues, not just locally, but nationally.
Thank you so much for that, Hope and Paul. I apologize that the video froze, but I'm excited that we were able to lift up this ministry. And I mean, this is just one of those ministries that's supported by gifts to One Great Hour of Sharing. So again, thank you for your generosity. Jana, I'm going to pass it back to you now.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you, Paul and Hope, for being part of this to lift up some things that are happening right here in the Presbytery. So right now we're going to move to a time of conversation. And so this is when you can ask some questions about some of the details behind what we've heard. But it's also a time that I would like us to open the door to some more practical aspects. What are you doing in your congregations that have to do with One Great Hour of Sharing or the special offerings? Or what questions do you have about how to bring this to the mission committee or the stewardship committee? And maybe that's a good place, Lauren, to start, is if someone hasn't been part of special offerings or is looking for a way to draw the congregation into this, number one, how did they get started? But I think it would be really helpful to hear what are some good talking points or questions to bring to our stewardship and our mission committees to get these conversations rolling.
Absolutely. I'll start, and then Wilson, if you have anything to add, feel free. But the special offerings are the greatest example of us being a connectional church. As you were able to see just from that One Great Hour Sharing map, the reach that we have around the corner and around the world. And so, you know, every little gift counts. And when it comes together, we're able to make a big difference and really strengthen that Presbyterian witness around the world. If you are interested in getting started either with the special offerings in general or with a specific offering, I would suggest reaching out to either Wilson or myself. And I have a slide with our contact info that I'll put up at the end of our time together. But we are more than welcome to provide you with resources to come either in person or virtually to, you know, a session meeting or a mission committee meeting and just talk through some stories. So in addition to ACS and ADAPT, but share other stories of impact taking place around the world and show what kind of difference these gifts can make. So we are available. I would say we'll be your first call and we can kind of walk you through that process together. Wilson, anything to add?
No, Lauren, I think you've hit it right on. I think this is the best way for us to be connectional, and please, you know, Lauren and I are your resources, and reach out to us. We're, like Lauren said, we're always happy to come be present with folks. We're always willing to preach, teach, come and be part of things, whatever you need. We're here for you, and we're here to help out in any way we can and to help your congregations understand the power and the transformative nature of these offerings that they receive 4 times a year.
I mean, I hope what churches are hearing more than anything else is they're not in this alone. They don't have to figure things out, that you have tools and resources and strategies to share. Stuart Jameson is one of our pastors on today. And Stuart, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know Carter Westminster is one of the 4 for 4 congregations. Lauren, maybe you can explain what that means, but Stuart, I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about your congregation's journey and why that's been something important to you.
Sure, I have. If I may, I'd like to start with sort of my personal journey on this all. I am been a member of Chicago Presbytery since like year 2000. And a big part of that time, I was chairing the Self-Development People Committee of the Presbytery of Chicago. And I'm really just excited and delighted to see where it's gone. I mean, while I wasn't pastoring churches in that time, I was working with the nonprofit and philanthropic community of Chicago. And I was convinced there was absolutely nothing like self-development of people out there. Its rationale and criteria and whatnot is almost counterintuitive to the philanthropy community as far as the grant making goes. Supporting people that are impacted by the issue. Whoa, that just like blows minds of some grant writers and whatnot. Then when I one of the things we did a couple of times for special offerings at Carter is to one time I invited she was at the last Presbyterian meeting from Lincoln Park Community Services, the head of it. Can't think of her name right now. Hope, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, she came and spoke to our church, and it was really powerful, and talked about their alumni group that SDOP supports. And then for the Pentecost offering or something like that, we did a YAV, young adult volunteer video. And my son went to Guatemala with young adult volunteers. So that worked pretty well. I just haven't the bandwidth and whatnot to do this, keep doing this every year. But we've done it a couple of times. I thought it was pretty successful. The other thing I wanted to say about that is to build on what Hope said. I don't know. I was at the workshop she mentioned at this spring and brought a group that I got familiar with that works with immigrants called Agents of Hope. And I don't know if they got funding, but to Hope's point,
Hope says they did.
Hey, good. Well, to Hope's point, there is, I think I would like our church to reach out and partner with them. I'm impressed with what they're doing.
Good.
It's immigrants helping immigrants, and many of the ones I met seem to be, MENA, Middle East, North African, which is my population at my church. So I think we might give them, a small amount so that they can be connected to us, and like Hope said, find a mission grant. So I've seen the potential for this as being really great. I'm glad to hear about Agents of Hope. Hope that's wonderful. It's a good program.
Yeah. And for those who are unfamiliar, when we say 4-for-4 congregation, that means a congregation that currently receives all 4 special offerings. So 1 great hour sharing, Pentecost, Peace and Global Witness, and Christmas Joy. So Stuart, thank you for that. And thank you to your congregation for its ongoing contributions and generosity. Just
to finish that off, like I said, our treasurer really just takes responsibility for that. It's a love of his and whatnot. And so he will just from the newsletter of the month that the offering is, he'll write a story, and then he'll have a little blurb in the bulletin for the 4 weeks that we receive it for all 4 offerings. That's all he does. And I don't even know. I mean, I like I said last night, I just found out that we had $70 was our percentage of the global peacemaking global witness one, according to him. He just managed it. I don't even get involved very much. So I can't give you a lot of details about, the inner workings of it, but I guess, the one takeaway from that is find somebody who's a champion for it in your congregation and
absolutely
empower them to do it.
Stuart, I do urge you to reach out to Agents of Hope and contact Julio about how to help them apply for a mission committee grant.
First,
Julio will help you with that.
Yeah, you're good. Yes. I mean, and I'd like to get our congregation first, giving them something and connected with them, and then we'll do the Julio thing, the mission committee thing, I think. Yeah.
The Julio thing. That ought to be our slogan.
The Julio thing.
Julio thing. What other questions do you have for each other or stories to share?
If someone could give us an idea of how to urge churches. I mean, Stuart's church is already the position to do that. But how do you get other churches willing to work with these nonprofit groups? I've got 3 more groups that need churches.
Yeah. That's a good question, because I mean, when you mentioned access to community services, we've got one member of our church who is really interested in. She has a daughter who's on the spectrum and been blind her whole life. And she's really interested in accessibility and diversity issues. So, but my only concern there is we are not the least bit accessible as a congregation, church building as a building. And so I don't want us to get, really involved in accessibility issues when we aren't. So that's part of it. There's got to be other churches for whom that would be a great partnership.
Well, I think again, it goes back to supporting 1 great hour of sharing, because there are already folks doing a lot of this great work. You don't have to duplicate those efforts. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so that would be, my first response to that would be, support 1 great hour sharing, and then through that support, help folks see, kind of walk them along that process, kind of like, what our presentation did of, taking it from this big denominational thing to what it looks like in our own community.
And just to follow up on one thing Lauren said, I think she's spot on, is to also on the Special Offerings website, there's an incredible amount of resources that are available for congregations. And that leads you into other places. So one of the gifts of being part of a connectional church is that we have a smorgasbord of opportunities for churches to engage and learn and glean resources. On specialofferings.pcusa.org/resources, we have all sorts of things to help you receive the offerings, but that may spark you to move into other places. Issues like property concerns. I was a Presbytery executive. Property issues are emerging every day, and that is a big part of what it means to be a congregation and moving into the future. But looking for resources that are available, gleaning best practices from other churches, all of that's available on pcusa.org and presbyterymission.org in different places. But I think Lauren's, exactly right, that we have, 1 great hour of sharing in particular is one of the best ways for congregations to engage on a broad scale. But then also through the ministry of things like United Alliance of Community Service and Hope and Paul and the amazing work that they're doing through Presbytery Chicago Self-Development of People, is to find those things that your congregation is most passionate about. Be it water, like the church in New Jersey, or poverty alleviation and justice and transportation, and other things like that, and figure out what works for you. Each congregation is different. We all have differing passions and ability levels and opportunities to engage. And it's not all about money either. Money is important, and money is what constitutes change, for better, for worse, in our systems right now. But also people power is just as important. And to be able to stand in solidarity through things that can bind us together, like 1 great hour of sharing, is one of the best and I think most unique ways we live into a reformed ecclesiology in this world, but particularly in this moment as a nation, where we are so divided and so polarized. To find those things that bring us together, and cause us to be the best version of ourselves, or like John Meacham, the author, talks about relying on our better angels, and I think he quotes Abraham Lincoln when he says that, and actually I know he does, quoting Abraham Lincoln, saying relying on our better angels and being the best version of ourselves, as we stand up as the church, be it through our giving, be it through our worship and our response to hearing the word read and proclaimed, but then also in how we live that out day after day. So there's discovering the essence of who we are as a people and who we are as congregations informs so much of our work and our life together. And giving is one of the best ways we live that out. But then following up on that giving with that next step of showing up, providing that space, creating space, and being in solidarity with those who live on the margins, and the widow, the orphan, the foreigner, and the stranger.
Thanks, Wilson. And while I've got you up on the screen, Hope and I were both commissioners to General Assembly this summer. And one of the things that we've talked about, and I think that we've both heard from folks, is some questions about the changes to special offerings coming up in the next year. And I'm wondering if you can give church leaders some talking points to help explain it to congregations so they understand what's coming and why it can be a good thing for them.
Yes, happy to, Jana. And when we're all together in Chicago next month, Lauren and I are really happy to be joining the Presbytery in person at your meeting in November, is to is to we're going to have a half sheet of paper that explains in kind of high level detail the changes that have been approved by the General Assembly and that will take effect on January the 1st, 2026. To speak about it in broad terms, the special offerings are reviewed every 4 years by a body elected by the General Assembly. That's been happening for 40 plus years. And the body that reported to the last General Assembly, the assembly that met this summer in Salt Lake, recommended a bevy of changes that were approved. In part of their work, they took a really substantive survey of the denomination to understand their affinity for and some of the nuances related to church-wide special offerings. One of the things they gleaned is that Presbyterians feel like they are getting asked for money by the national church far too frequently. So the decision and the discernment and the wisdom of the committee led them to recommend, and it was approved, to reduce the number of church-wide special offerings starting in 2026 from 4 to 3. However, it was also the wisdom of the committee, and now it's the wisdom of the General Assembly, and we're working every day to enact this, that none of the ministries, cause areas that are benefit from or receive funds from the receipt of the offerings would lose funding. So that means things like self-development of people, Presbyterian disaster assistance, Presbyterian hunger program, young adult volunteers, schools and colleges that equip communities of color. They will not lose funding.
But the money will go down. Is that true?
No, we did a series of financial projections, and we anticipate that due to the maneuvering of the different ministry areas into the 3 offerings, that we're actually projecting a slight financial, a revenue increase over the 3 offerings. I think, Hope, the concern that you're lifting up, if I may, and please correct me if I'm what I'm about to say isn't the basis behind your question, is one of the other recommendations that came out of this summer's General Assembly was to remove the naming of specific ministry areas and to instead lift up cause areas. And so and that was the reason behind that was for several things. Number one, fundraising research is saying that givers are more interested in general cause areas than they are in specific institutional programs. Number two, as you may or may not know, y'all may or may not know, that the PCUSA is in the midst of an administrative readjustment, and that there's a commission of the General Assembly to unify the Presbyterian Mission Agency and the Office of the General Assembly. And the reality is that the way things are currently fashioned and divided, the way the work gets done right now may be changing. In fact, we're pretty certain it will be changing in pretty big ways in 2025 when OGA and PMA become one agency on July the 1st. Yes, and you're exactly right, Lauren. So much of this work is intersectional. And that leads me to the final point, is that as these agencies combine, the way ministries are funded is going to change. We don't know what that's going to look like. And it's our job in the Office of Special Offerings and Appeals and in ministry engagement and support in general to raise the money for the church. And so we are awaiting, just like everyone else is, the news of how the ministries are going to get funded. So then we can go about interpreting that work for congregations and mid-councils to know. So I'm not ready to say, because I don't know if funding is going to go down or up. What I am willing and know, and I think we all know, is that things are changing, and that it's our job, and Lauren's and my positions, to be nimble and ready to talk about that in any way that we can, while also realizing that there's so much that we don't know right now. And I think the General Assembly and Hope and Jana as commissioners, you all please feel free to jump in, because Lauren and I, we're just innocent bystanders and our work as national staff folks. I think the General Assembly understood that in a big way this summer, that there is a lot that's going to be different. And we don't know what that is. The gift of a commission in our polity is that they function as the council. So they are off doing work. In fact, the commission's meeting today as we speak. So the commission is off doing their work, and they'll tell us when they're ready to tell us. And that's all well and good. And that we trust that connectionalness in our system, in our polity. And so we trust that the changes are going to be a value add to congregations, because it's going to help congregations talk about the mission and ministry of the church that's governed by the General Assembly in new ways, focusing on cause areas, less asks every year, but then also more powerful ways to tell stories. Because at the end of the day, this work is all about storytelling, and helping and equipping congregations and mid-councils to equip folks in the pews to tell the story of God's ministry in the world. And I think that's at the end of the day, no matter how things are aligned and no matter where funding is going and things like that, the ministry is still going to happen. And that's what matters the most. So I'm anxious about some things, just in full transparency, as I think all Presbyterians are right now. But also, I'm really excited to see the new and nimble and creative expressions of the reign of God that we're going to be able to help enliven through our work in 2026 and beyond. Jana, did I hit everything? Is there anything, Lauren, anything else I need to hit on that point?
No, I think that's really helpful. And
Yeah.
I'm such a big proponent of sharing stories. I think that's
Absolutely.
how we learn, especially when things change. Presbyterians are not known for their nimbleness when change happens. But the more we can hear stories of churches living into this and how the funds are really going to support mission and ministry of the reign of God throughout our country and throughout the world, I think that's where some of the inspiration happens and some of the creativity as churches get new ideas of ways they can partner.
Right.
We are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to invite Lauren to send us out with a word of prayer, but then we'll leave the Zoom room open and you all are welcome to stay on for a little more conversation with Wilson and Lauren and I. But thank you all for being part of this conversation. And Lauren, would you pray us out?
Absolutely. And while I do that, I'm also going to share my screen really quick. It has our contact information, but thank you so much for having us here today. Please join me in prayer. Holy and gracious God, thank you for the curious minds and the grateful hearts that are gathered around this Zoom room and around this presbytery. We lift up those ministries that are supported by the special offerings, from Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, which is currently responding to hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, to Self-Development of People, which is currently awarding grants to partners in the Chicago community. Thank you so much for the gifts that allow this work to happen and for the generosity of those in Chicago Presbytery. Be with us this day and be with our neighbors in need, from those the Alliance of Community Services and other partners in Chicago Presbytery, to those around the corner and around the world in Gaza, Lebanon, in Ukraine, in Florida. Please watch over those and provide them with safety and peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.